Hi. Today we'll be discussing two important topics from breathing and gaseous exchange, and I will be making the video from the point of view of NEET. I also will be elaborating how the thought process should be and how you should encounter particular questions and what are the important concepts that are required in order to tackle those questions. Okay. So in this particular chapter, the first topic is exchange of gases. And when I say gases, exchange of gases, I mean that majority of the two gases are there. One is oxygen and one is carbon dioxide. In order to exchange of gases, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of our exchange of gases? As you know, our tissues, or cells are constantly performing respiration, and in order to perform respiration our cells require a input of oxygen. This input of oxygen is supplied to tissue by blood. And how blood obtains that particular oxygen? It obtains from lungs. And how lungs obtain this particular oxygen? It obtains from air. Okay. And due to respiration our body produces carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide also goes to blood, then it goes to lungs, and we then exhale out into the air. So majority of the two gases will be discussed. One is oxygen and one is carbon dioxide. So for before beginning, I want to say that there is a pressure which will bother us, and which is known as partial pressure. What is partial pressure? Partial pressure is the pressure exerted by the individual components of gas in a mixture of gas. Suppose pressure that is exerted by components of individual gases in a mixture of gas. What do I mean? I mean, if I consider air, and in air there is oxygen, there is carbon dioxide, there is nitrogen, and there is blah 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 other things. So the pressure that is exerted only by oxygen will be known as partial pressure of oxygen. Only by carbon dioxide, partial pressure of carbon dioxide. These two are important. Okay. So the exchange of gases occurs at alveoli. And before going further, let me draw a bit. Here is a bad looking alveoli. Okay. Usually when I say alveoli, it has two types of membranes. The inner portion is made up of epithelium. As it is a part of alveoli, I am naming it as alveolar epithelium. The outside will be known as basement layer. Basement layer. As it is a part of alveoli, I am naming as alveolar basement layer. And there will be blood capillaries running around it. So let me draw it with a yellow. So there will be blood capillaries here. And through these blood capillaries, the deoxygenated blood is flowing. Now there are two more membranes, and there is a space between these. No? There is space between these particular two layers. This space is known as interstitial space. Known as interstitial space. The outside of the blood capillary, the outside layer of the blood capillary is known as capillary basement layer. Capillary basement layer. And the inside of the blood capillary is known as endothelium. So I hope the layers are clear. Okay. And all these layers makes up a diameter of only 0.2 millimeter. So this is very thin. That is why diffusion is occurring so much efficiently. So the capacity, or the capacity of a particular human being, the capacity of the lungs, I say capacity of the lungs to allow diffusion is known as diffusion capacities. Diffusion capacity. What is the diffusion capacity? Diffusion capacity is how much diffusion is occurring. How much diffusion of gas is occurring in the time of 1 minute and due to 1 mmHg difference of pressure. So let's assume that the partial pressure of oxygen is 104 mmHg and the partial pressure of oxygen inside the blood vessel is 103. It is a hypothetical situation. So the difference is just 1, and due to this difference, how much of oxygen is flowing from the alveoli to the blood capillary will be considered as the capacity, capacity as a diffusion capacity. Okay, so as we inhale, the major component of our inhaled or inspired air is oxygen. Inhale, so the air will be called inspired air. So the main component is oxygen. So the pressure of oxygen will be high, which is at 104 millimeter per Hg. Okay, and as the inhaled air contains low amount of carbon dioxide, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will also be low, which is at 45 mmHg, which is a 40 mmHg. Okay, I hope it's clear. And the deoxygenated blood that is brought by the blood capillaries, here the concentration of the oxygen is low, so naturally the partial pressure will also be low in case of oxygen. So you know that the flow occurs always from high potential to low potential. So in this case also the oxygen will flow from the alveoli to the blood capillary, due to the difference of partial pressure, as the partial pressure is 104 in the alveoli and the partial pressure of oxygen is around 40 mmHg, for oxygen. Okay, so I hope it is clear that the oxygen present in the blood capillaries is very low, and the oxygen and the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli is very high, so oxygen is diffusing from alveoli to the blood capillaries. And also the vice versa is true. As the blood is deoxygenated blood, it naturally contains high amount of carbon dioxide, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide inside the blood capillary will be higher than the alveoli, and it is around 45 mmHg. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is around 45 mmHg. Okay, now what happens? The carbon dioxide flows from the blood capillaries to the alveoli, and from there it is exhaled out. Okay, so how the tissues are getting the gases? Same as above. When the capillaries bring about the oxygenated blood, it naturally contains high amount of oxygen, and that is why the partial pressure of oxygen is around 95 mmHg. And the tissues that are surrounded here have partial pressure of oxygen around 40 mmHg. So now what happens, as you have guessed already, that the oxygen from the blood capillaries diffuses to the tissues, and as these tissues are actively respiring or performing respiration, so these tissues must have produced a high amount of carbon dioxide. So the amount of carbon dioxide is high, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is also high, and in the oxygenated blood the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is also low, and it is around 40 mmHg. and in the tissues it is 45 mH. So what will happen, as you have guessed right now, that the carbon dioxide flows from the tissue to the blood capillaries and it is then transferred to the lungs. So I hope you have understand how the exchange of gases are done. And to put a note, carbon dioxide diffuses 20 times more faster than oxygen, and oxygen diffuses twice more than nitrogen. Okay, and now we'll solve the question. So be ready.